to be discussional, but also we have some questions for the panel, and then we'll open it up for some discussion. So first, I would like the panelists to introduce yourselves, your name, your pronouns, and then also your relationship to Chico too. That's important as well.
I'll go first. I'll just go try to project because I don't know how this device works. My name is Rose Silsby. I'm a physics major. I'm a trans lesbian. I'm also autistic, just to label all the things. But I immediately forgot the questions because that's going to go well for me here. I am much less eloquent. This is a little bit out of my field of comfort, but I'm excited to be here today. I do math. That's my thing. I like to do math. Is this on?
Yes.
Yeah, now it is.
Yeah, it's on.
Hello.
There we go. Okay. Sorry. This is going to be a lot of this. I am not a very formal person. But relationship to Chico, I'm a 5th year here. I love it here. I'm from Davis. Chico is very much just Davis, but a little bit different. And for that, I enjoy it a lot because it's comfortable, but it's not the same.
Rose also forgot to mention that she is the president of the Student Physics Society, so that's not something we have every day at Chico State, so I applaud Rose for that. My name is Autumn, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Director of Social Justice and Equity with AS Student Government. I'm a double major in multicultural gender studies as well as sociology, and my relationship to Chico has been a turbulent one. I have dropped out, I have changed majors I don't know how many times. And I grew up as a military child, so I'm used to being surrounded by people who aren't like me, but to be in a very homogenous town has been a bit of a culture shock, but I still appreciate Chico State for all of its resources and the Chico State's ability to welcome and embrace.
Hi. Hi. My name is Maria Cepeda. I use they, she pronouns. I'm Mexican, first gen, child of an immigrant. I've been in Chico State since 2019. I double major in psychology and multicultural gender studies with an emphasis in Latinx studies. I've been all around campus. Mainly, I'm president of Chico State Pride for the past 2.5 years. I'm an intern right now at GSEC. I've been a part of the Cross-Cultural Leadership Center. I've been running in different areas, but I'm super excited for this.
Hi, is this working? Hi, my name is Morgana Fancy. She, her, they pronouns, and I graduated here last semester. I was a program coordinator for GSEC last year. And my degree is in multicultural and gender studies with a minor in comparative religion, sexual diversity, and gender and sexuality. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. This is also weird for me, so just excuse me as we kind of figure this out. So how this is going to work is I have a few questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it up. So hopefully you all are going to be taking notes because there's going to be a quiz. No, just kidding. No, it's not going to be a quiz. But hopefully you all can ask some questions of our panelists as well after we're done with our conversation. And so for the panelists, I'll just open it up with the first question, which is there are many feminisms and ways of understanding feminism in action. Let's start this conversation off by addressing how you understand intersectional feminism specifically and what that means to you.
Okay. To me, intersectional feminism is just any kind of feminism or feminism-related equivalent that prioritizes those with, prioritizes all people, not just the ones at the forefront, that takes into account everyone's different needs, everyone's different material conditions, the things that people need to be supported, because that is fundamentally what feminism should be. It should be about women supporting other women and other gender minorities as well. Everything in that vein, it should be just inclusive of everything. Race, of gender, of ability, of everything you can think of needs to be inclusive, because if it's not, to me at least, there is no point. It is not complete without that.
I love that statement, it's not complete. So definitely giving honor to Kimberly Kenshaw, as also Sojourner Truth for her amazing speech, Ain't I a Woman Too, and that really speaks to this intersectionality of what the identity it is to be a woman. Being a Black queer woman is going to be completely different woman and being white and woman. And I think, as you beautifully said, it takes having all those voices and giving care and consideration to women to really have feminist action, because action can come in different forms. I recognize that I'm a lot better with dealing with bureaucracy and dealing with the fundraising aspects than I am boots on the ground. And I think we need both of those types of feminism, both of those types of activists to get feminism and any type of social movement really going. So I think about those different ways in which we can bring to the table, given our own situated knowledge and our own identities and memories. Those are all valid, and to invalidate or just say one woman is less than another because of what we might be lacking takes away from feminism. So diversity is definitely what makes feminism so great.
Yes, you said that so beautifully, and like y'all pretty much tapped on the points that I wanted to bring up regarding to the question. Just the importance of being able to include everybody regardless of gender, sexuality, ethnicity, thinking about globally how we can emphasize the importance of feminism, because I know culturally those tend to be different, like comparing feminism in the US is going to be different in like Mexico, for example, or like different areas of the world. So being able to include different voices and understand that everybody's going to have different needs and everybody's going to have different experiences based off what they lived through and how they experience feminism, or even what their definition of gender and woman is. So being able to accommodate for everybody and recognize that not everybody wants the same thing is very important.
What everybody else said, but also the first thing that comes to my mind is like Bell Hooks' definition, and I can't remember it verbatim, but she basically said feminism is to end sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression. And for intersectional feminism, I think of that on top of everybody else who is is experiencing different kinds of like racism or just any kind of like held back against from society against them. And so, yeah, like Kimberly Crenshaw, I love reading all of her stuff, and it just makes so much sense to me, even though I heard the term in high school. I don't think it was explained to us necessarily correctly. And then in all my women's classes and just working in activism, I think it just was very clear to me that everybody has a different journey, and just because we all want to go into the end goal, it takes different paths to get there for everybody.
Thank you, panelists. You all hit on some really good key points. I think one of the things that Bell Hooks also touches on when we think about intersectional feminism is thinking about the importance that social justice trickling down, meaning that we only center one group. So whether that is heterosexuals, or we center white women, or we center women with disabilities, whatever that means, we can't just think like, oh, everyone else is going to be affected and influenced, right? We have to think about how can we be centering everyone's experience, right? Everyone's marginalized experiences at the same time. So thank you for that, panelists. That leads into our next question, which is, how does your intersectional identity as a woman or a non-conforming person impact your outlook on the world and social justice issues?
It is hard to put it into words, but it is everything. There is not a point in my life where I have ever been distanced from my trans identity. It's not possible. It's who I am. It's who I am when I'm outside. It's who I am when I'm by myself. It's who I am when I'm walking through campus and I catch people staring at me because I'm an anomaly in one way or another, whether it's positive or negative. It is everything. There is no way to look at it that does not shape it. It shapes every one of my beliefs, every one of my ideas, everything the way I see the world is fundamentally shifted because of it. Without that, I am not who I am. It's just without it, and that is part of intersectionality. Again, is without that, I would not be it just wouldn't be the same.
This is why I love having Rose around. And I come definitely more from a critical race theory almost, but definitely giving that intersectional framework guidance as well. But when you are Black in a white space, and when institutions such as college and going to the DMV and interacting with peers and even having a love life are all through the lens and the dual consciousness of being Black and seeing yourself and being a Black woman and how white people perceive you, it gives it a bleak outlook, because everything I do, I always have to wonder, am I benefiting from this because I'm perhaps lighter skinned? Am I benefiting or losing from this because I'm Black, because, or colorism, or being pretty, or being educated? Like, I'm constantly second guessing and wondering people's intentions in the social justice realm as well, and in the feminism realm. Are they taking me serious enough? Or are they putting me on this pedestal for diversity purposes? So I always have to, whenever I'm interacting with people who are different than me, and interacting with white people as well, I like having that authentic connection and that authentic communication of like, hey, I know, I know, I'm lighter skinned, I'm pretty, like it's just something that you have to accept and uplift other people who might not have that same privilege. And I look to people who have more privilege than me, who have more money, who have a better complexion or more connections to uplift others who do not. And I think that's so important with social justice. You have to take what you have and help those who do not have. It's not, as people say, it's not like an oppression Olympics. It all sucks for everybody. So taking what you have and using it as a weapon of defense rather than as oppression, I think is one of the ways to lead social justice.
So beautifully said. I mean, it's very difficult to go along the world knowing what your identity is, especially with us being able to like be in a panel and talk about this openly. It's definitely a whole surreal experience, because even as I grew up, it's expected to not be so blatant about your identity, even with being very in my Mexican culture, speaking Spanish, constantly having these conversations with my family. A lot of people even said that I should really make sure that especially when I was learning English for the first time, is making sure that my Spanish accent doesn't pop out, making sure that I don't dress in a more traditionally Mexican attire, even like with nicknames. Like, for example, something that is very important in Mexican culture is that most people tend to focus on your middle name. So in my case, my middle name is Guadalupe, Lupita. Like, that's how everybody who I'm more closer with names me Lupita, Lupita, Lupita. But like, they kind of, my family emphasized that, oh no, you shouldn't worry about that, you should just go with your first name because that's like the easiest, and even then there's like Maria and as Maria, you know? So just knowing that every instance that I have come by having to be grown up and being seen as a woman, and like noticing the difference with sexism as well, just like knowing that constantly being perceived as feminine as a woman is always gonna bring me down, which really sucks, especially with a lot of spaces with majority cis men. You know, I know I was a little over my place with my ramble, but it's just recognizing how important it is to be able to speak out about these issues and be able to have conversations with others is absolutely everything to me. And the fact that if I don't bring up my identity as someone who's queer, as someone who's Latina, someone who is here in education, it would be kind of weird, you know?
Can you repeat the question? Just so I know like the whole thing.
So how does your intersectional identity as a woman or non-gender, non-conforming person impact your outlook on the world and social justice issues?
Okay. So I think for me particularly, I am a part of many different communities. I am half Filipino, half white, and for that I also wanted to talk about like colorism and how I didn't even know that existed until college. I always, and even to this day, have a hard time accepting invitations to be a part of like a panel full of women of color because I don't see myself that way. because I know that I have a very light complexion and that I have those like ability to not have the racist comments to my face. But with that, I also am in different groups where sometimes they do say stuff and they don't think that I am a part of that community. And it's hard for me because one, I am, and also my family looks a lot darker than me. So along with that and just being an activist, I feel like I have the knowledge of many different communities and what their hardships are. So it helps me in that way where I want to help educate others and create a change. But it is still hard for me with my own intersectional identity to figure that out. I also identify as bisexual, so it's hard to figure out, just like with every little thing that I have, where I actually feel like I belong. Because even with that, like in the LGBT community, a lot of people are against, or they have like bi erasure, where you can't pick a side. And so in every community, I feel like I don't belong in some sense. But I'm still working on that, and I don't want that for other people who are like me. So yeah.
Thank you all so much for sharing, and that leads really well into our next question, which is, why is it important to recognize intersectionality in social justice movements that specifically center on women's rights and student activism?
It's interrelated with everything we've already been talking about, but it's in the same vein of the original thing, like that it is not, like feminism is not complete if it is not intersectional. The direct consequence of that is that if you're not supporting all of these intersectional identities, then you are literally leaving them, like, you are just leaving them out, like, in the lurch. Like, you are explicitly not including them is basically putting people in danger, like explicitly. Like, it's with feminism is supposed to be a network of support, not supporting specific people because you don't agree with them or because you don't, any variety of reasons. It is fundamentally against what I believe feminism should be for in every way. Like, and for student activism, it's the same thing. Like every student needs support in their own ways. Every student has their own needs. And it all comes down to people's needs and how they change and how different they are, but that everyone's needs should be met if they're able to.
So when I think about student activism, it's such a beautiful thing, and our keynote speaker touched a lot about this earlier, so I really enjoyed her speech. And we're at a great point where we can break these historically well-known facts about feminism and make it this beautiful thing, where it is diverse, where it is being inclusive and not focusing on the majority and the closer to the normative, but focusing on that minority within the minority and the minoritized of people who want to be feminist, and reaching out to those who want to be feminist starts with student activism. And so leading the committee for social justice and equity, I have a beautiful array of voices from so many different communities that you will not see just looking at Chico State and walking around Chico State. Like, I had to actively and intentionally seek these voices out to be at the round table, to give them the power and the respect to do what they want to get done around Chico State. And so, again, it takes putting students in positions of power and bringing them into the round table to help those who don't have that voice, who's just too shy or they don't know enough people, and that starts with student activism. So I'm really privileged in my place, being a director at a student level, being on so many different boards, because and also going out to the community and listening, like, hey, what would you like? Hey, what would you like? To see, like, I can make this happen. I can definitely make that happen. It's intentional work, and students at Chico State that I've seen are very driven. So I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was off for a second, but just intersectionality is just huge in every community, because again, every student will have their specific needs, and a lot of them go through multiple identities that is so hard to just generalize it in one way. And that's something that I really try to bring up even in communities where it's just centered on one thing. So for example, even though I do have multiple identities, I do tend to focus a lot more on the queer community. And I know that recently Chico State Pride is collaborating with Metra, who is a majority Latinx Mexican organization here on campus, and for the Dia de los Muertos. So having to have that conversation with other queer students who do not identify Latinx is to recognize the importance of learning other cultures and recognize that there are queer people in those other cultures that needs to also be focused on, and understand that there's always going to be, it's important to recognize when people are being left out of conversations, because even in like a lot of the queer community is very cisgender, white focused, so being able to include trans and non-binary folks and how to bring them into the conversation. Make sure to focus on not just gay or lesbian folks and bring bisexual, pansexual, focusing outside of monogamous relationships, and even in general, like how can we impact other communities, Black, Latinx, Asian communities, for example, and see how we can focus on queer, how we can help other orgs when learning about the LGBTQ plus community, you know, and even then just like being able to learn about other people and always stay open-minded and recognize that again, diversity and inclusivity is very much beautiful and very much a necessary component when it comes to connecting with others.
For me, I think student activism is super important, and I kind of feel like one of the poster children for student activism. I helped a lot on campus. I was the leader and facilitator for a women's circle since I was a part of it since my freshman year. So it was something that I was very adamant about, and especially like in high school, I started a club too, our first women's activist club, and it was just something that I knew I wanted to do when I went into higher education. And for my future, I know that I want to be a professor and continue those things on this type of community on campus. I do think it's hard outside of higher education for student activism. Not saying that there isn't any, there is a lot, but I do notice that it does trickle down from higher education to different high schools and things like that. I talked to a friend of mine recently who is a teacher of 5th graders, and they have actually surprised me with the way that they accept each other. They all understand what pronouns are, and they're very respectful, and if someone says something, they all tell them, hey, that's not okay, and that just really made me feel a lot better. So I do think it's happening, but I do think this is where it does start. And there's a lot of things that we still need to work towards, but it's just, I don't know, it's something that makes me go and what I get up for every day. I just want to help out in every way I can and continue this community of student activism.
Awesome, thank you so much. Something that you all, a theme that you all been bringing up is the importance of inclusivity and making sure that all voices are at the table, right? And I always like to think of inclusivity as thinking as, why do we have that table in the first place, right? How can we dismantle this white supremacist, this systems of domination? How do we actually start talking about that and think about ways in which we can be inclusive in that way as well? So thank you all for bringing that up. I do want to leave plenty of time for questions, but I have one more question and then we'll open it up. So my last question, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience, is what motivates you to keep working towards justice in a time where the country is so divided and many people choose to reject the realities of social issues and also scientific fact?
For me, there's two answers for this. They're both true. There's a longer answer and a shorter answer. Longer answer is that I want to believe that a better world is possible. It's cliched and it's a bit naive, but it is what I want to believe that things can be better, and that I feel like it's hard for some people to believe that, and that is kind of what keeps me going, is that to try to spread that as much as I can, or to just to help people. I don't know. I just care about people, and I think you should care about people, and I don't think I have to tell people that in this room that. But other people do not. It's not as worldwide as a belief as I would hope it is. And the shorter answer is that I don't really have a choice. I am not, like I was talking about earlier, I cannot distance myself from being trans. There's not, I am not privileged enough to just put it to the side and say, okay, I'm just not going to worry about it for a little while. Like, it is not, I'm sure that's true of everyone here. It's just, that is a part of, like, that's something that needs to be highlighted, which is that, you know, if you're not from a position of that kind of privilege, you can't avoid it. You can't just say, okay, I'm just going to not worry about this, I'm going to focus on my own thing. I have to worry about the state of the world, the state of the country, and the state of how women and trans women and every sub-genre of women are because that's me, and that's my friends, and that's the people I know, and that's the people, that's everyone. So it's a little rambling at the end.
I love that. So what keeps me motivated is that, so I come from 3 generations of military men and women. My parents were in the Marines. My granddad on my dad's side, which is the black side, he was in the Army, and then my great-grandpa was one of the first Marines who helped desegregate the Marines. So I come from a long line of history of like military involvement, and people ask me like, wow, you must be such a proud American, like you must love the military, you must love being an American. I'm like, look, all of my rights today have not come from the military. They have come from activists. They have come from people on the floor. They've come from people fighting in our home, in our country, not from people fighting abroad. And when I have 3 generations of proud black men who fought for a country and then come home and get called boy, it's like, then yeah, I get a little sad. I'm just like, oh, what's the point then? But like Rose said, I don't have a choice. I can't turn off my blackness. I can't turn off my woman card. I don't have that privilege. And when I think about just all the activists who put me in the position where I am, the right to go to school, the right to get married, the right to marriage to intersect, to marriage and interracial and marriage to the same sex, to go to school and have the right to be in a quality education, like, I don't want that all to go away in a time right now where it is very much on the table. And so that's just something that keeps me going. It's just when people, I really do think about all those many times people will be like, oh, you're such a proud military person. I'm like, no, I'm a proud activist. I'm a very proud activist. So if I could be at the table around people who don't care or just would rather throw money at it, hey, I'll take the money. Like, I'll put it to good use. So being an activist and being a philanthropist are 2 of my proudest parts of my identity, as well as being black and being a woman and being queer. So that's what keeps me motivated. And I think about all my youngest children, who are not children, my siblings, or my children, I guess, 7 and 5, who live in Texas right now, and my 16-year-old brother who's black and lives in Texas, and how much I'm just like, please do not get pregnant right now. It's sad, and I have to fight for their rights because they're in Texas and I'm in California. And they look up to me because they know I'm an activist, so I have to protect them.
Yeah, you really cannot ignore it. Like, you really can't ignore the issues that is going on, in not only locally but nationally, to see how it could affect you. I think one of the biggest instances where I recognize that there's such a big power dynamic over like people in politics was when the Obama was going for his first term of presidency, and I didn't know, how old was I? I was like 7, 8 years old, and I didn't know anything about politics then, but I knew that if people did not vote for Obama, then there's going to be big issues with me, my family, my friends. Sorry, I got a little emotional there, but being able to know that the doings that I do now will be easier for the next generation after me is something that really does move me forward. I didn't know I was gonna cry now.
My initial answer would be anger is what motivates me. But just like everybody else, it's hard to get away from it. It's the first thing that I think about in the morning. I check the news. It's hard on me to do that, and I try not to do it all the time. But and just knowing like all of my friends and family are dealing with that, and it's not only just me. I think that just my own anger and fear of them getting hurt is something that does push me along every day, even though there's days I feel like I want to give up and I don't want to do this anymore. You can't. Like, it's just not possible. I remember when the whole overturn of Roe v. Wade happened, and I was just depressed. I was in tears all day. And when it was first released, the news, and when I talked to Molly and GSEC, and we did all that downtown to try to make it known that we were fighting back against it, and even though it still did happen like a month later, that day made me feel a lot better about my community and how many people showed up. But it's still there. It's still happening. And I was working at Catalyst at the time when it did happen, the Domestic Violence Center, and just going into work that day, it was so quiet. Because it's not only us who are dealing with it, but all of our people that we were helping to serve. And yeah, it's a lot of anger and a lot of fear, and there is no way out of it. It's just through it.
Thank you all so much for sharing your knowledge and your experiences and your emotions. It's okay to cry, totally okay. I want to open it up now for questions from the audience.
Well, I'm deliberately making this a sticky one. So, the first Native American female just went into space. She's wearing NASA. So, if you were given the opportunity to be the first and go into space, how would you label yourself? Yeah, it wasn't an easy one, I know.
It's an interesting, I haven't thought about it. For me, it would probably just be the first trans woman. As far as I'm aware, there has not been any trans women in space. I feel like I would know, and if I don't, that's embarrassing. But, you know, that is fundamentally, that is, if there was a one that I would pick, it is trans woman. I am a trans lesbian, I am autistic, like I said at the start. Also, I never mentioned I use she, her pronouns. I realized that, like, very far after the fact that I forgot to do that at the beginning. But there are all those things, but that is what I feel the most influences me. But that is fairly easy for me because I am white, and that is not a factor. That is not a part that I have to, like, I am not really weighing those two things, whereas I know people that here probably are much more.
Not for you.
Wait, is this a question for all of us? Or the physicists?
You have the chance to be the first going into space. What are you going to fill in the label?
It is a bit hard having so many intersectional identities, being not only black, just racially. I racially identify as black because I do look black. I am also Native American, Coahuila-Tecans, and Hispanic, just due to being in Southern Texas. Queer, and I'm not very savvy on who's been to space and who hasn't been to space. I hopefully shouldn't have to be the first. Hopefully people will be paving the way and making it so much easier for, if not me, then my sister, and if not my sister, then my brother. But for space, I feel like it's interesting. But if I had to pick one identity, then it would definitely be like black queer woman. That's just racially how I'm perceived and walk through this world. And I know I've talked about this with Marie. We've had these conversations about being Hispanic, but not feeling kind of accepted in the sense because I don't speak Spanish and I don't have that same privilege of interacting with my Hispanic identity. And the same thing with my Native identity. The tribe's practically wiped out. So I am left with what I can hold, and it's black. And I treasure that so much. So for whatever I am the first for, it will be black. So.
I think if I ended up going to space, y'all should be concerned because I know nothing about astronomy. But I mean, it's very difficult to say because as Autumn was saying earlier, I don't know much about the people who have went up into space. I know that recently they announced the first Latina astronomer going up to space. That was like a big thing on social media, and just seeing how beautifully she interacted with the people around her and see how everybody was so proud because it's such a very big and important deal. I just wanted to shout that out. It's just like makes me so happy when I see people be successful, But I think, yeah, first queer and Latina astronomer.
astronomer?
Astronaut. That's different. I'm telling y'all, concerning if I go. But it's just very interesting. And again, I'm kind of really hope I'm not the first. I mean, yeah, I'm not the first. If I happen to go anytime soon, I mean, but I don't know how to answer this question. That is my fatal answer.
I also don't know much, but I mean, I have, like I said earlier, I have a lot of different identities that I do go by, but I think, I don't know, there's a lot. I think maybe I would just say that I'm from a small town, and I would probably be like, you know, the coolest person there if I did that. So, I mean.
Thank you. Other questions?
So
Insert your point.
No, you're good. I'll take the point. One thing that all of you touched on is that it's not a choice. You have to think about your intersectional identity and do the activist work so that future yous don't have to struggle like you did. How do we get white women and men to start thinking about these things?
Did you all hear the question? Okay.
Knowledge is power.
Pocketbooks. We didn't, when the civil rights movement was starting, you know, a lot of things didn't really happen until, for white people at least, until we started hearing the word hurts. The Montgomery bus riots, you know, refusing to take the bus cost cities around the country a lot of money. And being in the philanthropy council at Chico State, money is power. Money is practically the only language that I've seen that people in positions of power speak. So when I think about getting white people at the table, and when you're thinking about, where's Molly? We learned about Cesar Chavez and how the riots worked, and nothing really happened again until there was boycotts on grapes. And so if there isn't a way to willingly get them there, then money is the only way. Whether it's getting them to donate their money nicely, or hurting the pockets by boycotting. So that's just what I've been raised with, and that's the mindset that unfortunately is very capitalistic, but it's what's gotten us a lot of places in the different protests that we've seen historically throughout this country.
Yeah, no, money does affect people greatly, and if you're able to take a large sum of that, they definitely will listen, which is a terrible way to think about it, because you really want them to have an understanding of these communities and want them to really deeply think about what actions they're doing that are negatively affecting them. But no, just make them broke and they're good, you know? In either way, I think regardless, it's really important to focus on the communities themselves anyways. I think a big conversation that I was having in one of my classes was Professor Sue Chang. It's my capstone psychology course on microaggressions, is how a lot of resources regarding racism, sexism, homophobia is always focused on white groups, and there is not a lot of focus on how to look into these communities and see what their needs are. So knowing that to work with these groups and understand what their needs are is very important.
I was going to talk about money as well. I do think that I grew up with that too, where my parents would always, if we learned like a restaurant where their money went, for example, not to bust anyone's bubble, but Chick-fil-A hates gay people, and all their money goes against or marriage equality and all that kind of stuff. So once that came out, no more Chick-fil-A. Same with Leatherby's. With Hobby Lobby, they're against abortion access and rights for women. And I just think if you stop shopping there and you stop putting your money there, then they're going to have a hard time. And they're not going to have that much, I guess, like publicly, their views on people, and everyone's just going to go there and put that money in there, and then they're going to be more powerful. But if they don't have that, they cease to exist. And even though to some people like they're like, well, it's just, you know, whatever, it's money, like they're gonna keep going. If enough people do it, it's gonna do something. And even the small steps make a huge difference. So yeah.
And on the topic of money, I will get on my soapbox a little bit. This goes back to, I firmly believe that any feminist movement that has staying power has to be anti-capitalist fundamentally. There's no way you cannot exist in a capitalist society without being against it, being willing to do these things, being willing to fight the system in ways that it hurts the system in total. And to do that, you have to be anti-capitalism. You have to realize the ways that it is so pervasive in our society, where like anything you do to be progressive, society, the people in power, the people that have been put in power behind this capitalist system, which is designed, it's not by accident, it has been designed specifically to elevate these people that are white, that are straight, that are white. I said white twice. It's an important one. That are white, straight men, typically. It is built to put them in positions where they can then profit from keeping people down, basically. It all comes back to money. It truly does. And it's frankly, it's depressing. It's depressing that is the world we live in. And I believe that in order to move forward, you have to be against it. You have to be consciously against it. You can't just kind of think that, oh, it has some bad things. You have to believe that we can be better, and that there is a better system that is possible. Whatever that may be, there can be better than what we have currently.
Thank you all, and I'll just add really quickly, I think one of the other things to just